Last question comes from Fred Roberge, our last panelist question from Fred Roberge on the issue of earmarks. And you can direct that to Mr. Ginta.
Mr. Ginta, many earmarks are for infrastructure and transportation, such as the Manchester Airport Access Road. If you reject earmarks for New Hampshire, doesn't that turn New Hampshire into a donor state with our federal tax dollars being used for earmarks in other states while simultaneously abandoning these critical transportation issues? And if you don't reject earmarks for New Hampshire, how will you lead the way in getting spending under control?
Well, part of the problem in our country is that when we talk and about earmarks, the first thing that comes to our mind is the bridge to nowhere. What we have to do is allow the federal government to address its federal responsibilities with respect to infrastructure. But that doesn't mean that we should have an abusive earmark process where members of Congress are bringing back pork, which is taking taxpayer money. If there is a federal obligation and responsibility, the federal government should address it, whether it's in New Hampshire or another state. But what has happened over the course of several years is a massive abuse of the system. And the notion of just simple transparency hasn't done anything to address that reduction in necessary spending. The fact of the matter is the budget is a $1.4 trillion out of balance. We had Congress leave a week and a half ago without a federal budget. October 1st, the new fiscal federal year started, and the country doesn't even have a budget. So you can't address reducing spending if you're not there and you're not willing to accept the challenge and the responsibility you have.
Mr. Ginta, thank you. Congresswoman?
Once again, Frank danced around the question. The place that we're standing in right now received an earmark. NHPR, where we had our other debate, would lose federal funding. That's what he's calling for. I happen to agree with the senior senator of New Hampshire, Judd Gregg, who has brought many good earmarks to help the universities and to help our infrastructure. You're absolutely right. If we don't do that, we will be the donor state. And by the way, we have been the donor state. So we send New Hampshire tax dollars down to Washington. We should bring New Hampshire tax dollars back. I think it's incredible that he calls New Hampshire tax dollars pork. Now, I know that Frank hasn't been looking on my website, I think, but I will tell you that every earmark is posted there. And when I had I think I had 13 town halls in the past year, I brought the list of earmarks so that people could see how they helped. Frank doesn't want to help out the bridges between Maine and New Hampshire. Frank doesn't want to help out the infrastructure. He doesn't want to help out the university. He doesn't want to help out the healthcare systems. The reality is that it is in the Constitution. This is congressionally directed spending. We have the power of the purse, and nobody knows our district better than members of Congress who represent it. But he's right about the corruption and the problem they had. We fixed that. You have to put your name and affidavit, and in the House you have to post all of it so people can see. So I'm proud of the work I've done for New Hampshire.
30 seconds.
You know, Congresswoman, it's not about the power of the purse or your individual power as a member of Congress. It's supposed to be about the individual taxpayer. And you have forgotten that the individual taxpayer in our state cannot afford the bloated budgets and the bloated spending that you have advocated for. It is time in this country to peel back the spending, to get a simple budget passed that is balanced without raising taxes, and look at the deficit and the debt and start reducing them. It is a very simple formula that Americans are demanding. And what you want to do is have a big government solution for everything.
Well,
that is the clear difference in this campaign. You are for big, large government, doing everything for everybody. I am for limited, good, effective government that is going to finally protect the taxpayer again.
Actually, Frank, I'm for effective government. Are you telling the good people of New Hampshire that there should be no federal money coming to their hospitals, no federal money coming to their roads, no federal money coming to their schools, no federal money coming to their infrastructures? You can't just say, peel back, peel back. You're right. President Clinton had balanced budgets. The Democrats had balanced budgets, and they should be that way. But as I pointed out before, and as the Republican leaders pointed out, they overspent. They put 2 wars on budget, off budget. They weren't paid for. They created enormous deficits. Do not ever forget, Frank, that there was a budget surplus until George Bush became president. What they did, we reinstituted pay-as-you-go. It's very important, pay-as-you-go. You pay for what you get. The Republicans allowed that policy to lapse, to end. They didn't care about those deficits. So you're right about the deficits. I'm as worried about the money as you are, but you're wrong about how it started, and you're wrong about where to save that money. That money should go to this state to take care of our infrastructure needs, our education needs, our health care needs.
15 seconds, final word, and I'm going to move
Well,
on.
you actually violated pay-go on several votes, first of all. Secondly, the budget deficit in 2006, when you took office, was $248 billion. And you said at the time that you wanted to reduce the deficit. It is now $1.4 trillion. You don't have an answer for the reasoning for that spending, nor can you tell New Hampshire how it has improved our economic
I
challenges
actually have
here.
a great answer. It was called the Bush economy. It was called the Wall Street fiasco without oversight. Then it was called the Bush bailout. I have a great answer, and I read you the quote.
When are you going to stop
You
blaming
know,
George
the
Bush?
problem is, Frank, the problem is
When
that
are you going to take
you want to
responsibility
go
for
back
the 4
and
years
change
you
the
have
facts.
been in Congress?
Because the reality is, this is where the trouble came from, and people understand that. And so we are putting in policies, and yes, some of them are expensive, but you ask anybody here who's had to receive an unemployment check or who is worried about their job, if they want to make sure that there'll be something there for them, and you will find out the answer
So
is
you
yes.
support a $1 trillion deficit increase in
You
the
know
4
what I
years you
support?
were a member of
I
Congress?
support the middle class. I support regulation of Wall Street, which we did Wall Street reform. I support taking care of the people, and I support effective government. Not a huge government, but an effective government. That Bush bailout was the big hand on the people, as we all know.
Well,
I voted
from
against
2006
that.
to 2010, again, the 4 years you were a member of Congress, the deficit increased $1 trillion. Do you support
Frank,
that?
if you want to pay down the debt, why are you willing to go to China and borrow money to give to millionaires? Are you going to say no? You know that's true. Those tax cuts, 80% will go to people who are earning $1 million or more. Will you say no to them? Will you say, no, I'm not going to go borrow money from China and give it to the people who don't need it because we want to be fiscally responsible? I'm saying no.
Well, what I will say, well, actually, you didn't say no. Again, $1 trillion in spending and borrowing. What I will say yes to is when the policy of President Kennedy in '62, who said, let's cut taxes for everyone to get the economy moving again. That is the kind of fiscal discipline that we need in this country.
I
not
can't allow
borrowing
you to
and
misquote
spending.
President Kennedy anymore. I love the way you go to
I'm going to
Democratic
stop. I'm going to
presidents,
stop
but
both
that
of you very
didn't
quickly
happen.
because we're running low on